Welcome to another episode of the SNA Speakeasy. And our guest today is Phoebe Amoroso. She is a multimedia journalist, and I'll let her take over from there. Why don't you introduce yourself, what you do, who you are, all that kind of stuff?
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me on the Speakeasy. I'm Phoebe. I'm originally from the UK. I first came to Japan in 2009. Long story, went back and forth, won't bore you with all the details, but decided I really liked the country and wanted to pursue a media related career here. So I applied for a something called a Daiwa scholarship from the Daiwa Anglo-Japanese Foundation. Basically, it's a foundation that tries to promote ties between the UK and Japan, and people from all kinds of backgrounds go into that. And that was a really fantastic opportunity because I came out in September 2014, was put through a year of language school, and then was able to get work experience in my chosen field. I worked as a video journalist for Reuters at the time, and then I joined a production company that works with NHK. NHK World. They were looking to make more international programming. So I've worked on various documentaries and programs for the English channel, as well as ending up doing some news reporting as well in front of camera. So I've kind of come from both sides. And in the past year, I've gone freelance. So I do lots of writing, some video making, and as you said, multimedia, just a bit of a mix, really.
Okay, well, multimedia means just many kinds of media, right?
Yeah. I also do food tours, which is another thing because I'm a
Well,
big foodie. I love.
I think that's one of the reasons why we have you here tonight. So the our topic is living large under lockdown. Now, I confess that this was my title, not Phoebe's title, but the idea being is that here we are now living in a new era where if people are good, if they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, they should be living many hours inside their homes. And this is a radical lifestyle change for a lot of people. For other people like me, it's kind of just another day. That's pretty much the way I've been living anyway.
That's the jokes I've actually heard from many writer friends. The rest of the world, isolation writers. What's changed?
Yeah, right. I mean, for me, it's like, okay, yeah, it's a Wednesday. That's all. Yeah. So, um,
But you got the day of the week right. That is very admirable.
yeah. Well, I sometimes they do meld together, but it's only because I knew this event was on a Wednesday. It kind of cued me to what day of the week it was.
Structure week around that.
That's right.
Well, I know. I think. Well, as you know, being in Japan as well, I think it's quite a strange scenario here, due to the term. I mean, we're talking about living large under lockdown, but Japan isn't doing a full lockdown, and now there's a soft lockdown. We're starting to use language that reminds me traumatically of hard Brexit and soft Brexit, being British and having to deal with that for the past few years. Um, so the, I don't know about you, but personally, when I heard Abe finally make the announcement regarding, this is a national emergency, but essentially the requests for people to exercise self-restraint, jishuku, weren't really any different from before. But by attaching the terminology national emergency, yes, I think more people took it seriously. And then, of course, Koike, the mayor of Tokyo, stepped up her rhetoric on that. But there's a lot of sort of conflicting and confusing messages. So I find among certainly other journalists I know and friends and acquaintances here, how does one behave personally is kind of a matter of contention and confusion.
Mm.
I think some of the discussions I had where people were almost looking forward to having this national emergency declaration because then it would be okay, we know how to behave. But it's very unclear cut, and as you know, izakaya Japanese pubs have still kind of made the cut as essential services. What they allow to serve alcohol till 7 p.m., stay open to 8 p.m. Very conflicting messages here. And whilst I mean the center of Tokyo is empty, Shibuya and Shinjuku are really the people are just not around compared to normal. Interestingly, if you want to get masks, word on the street today, Takashi Tadori is where it's at. That's the sort of Harajuku area, normally full of tourists. Obviously, the shops there are still trying to bring people in. Apparently, abundance of masks. However, I live in a very residential area, as do many of my friends, And because no one's in the center, a lot of people are working from home, not everybody. These areas are kind of buzzing. So how do you, when I pop out to the supermarket, it feels kind of, I was just out just before I spoke to you, it feels very much like normal.
Yeah.
So you kind of get this sense of isolation. It feels a little bit disingenuous to talk about full lockdown when I have friends in the UK, in Italy, that haven't left their house in weeks. So balancing that kind of feeling alongside the fact that, of course, events are cancelled, and yes, as you said, starting off this session, if people are behaving themselves, they're not supposed to be going out and meeting people. So yes, in general, I have done some social distance walking, which is with some friends. You space out. It's amazing having a picnic 2 meters apart, but you can try. I'm quite loud anyway, so. But in general, yes, nothing's happening in terms of events outside the house. So we are sat here in an essential lockdown, at least among my circle. I do know people who are still going out and still behaving as normal. But with Hokkaido declaring a second state of emergency this week, it seems that Japan is not off the hook. So how does one go about enjoying oneself? Sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here.
Well, what you say is very true. I mean, I think the description which you made of the city of Tokyo right now, where the centers like Shibuya or Takeshita-dori or Shinjuku are pretty much empty, but the residential areas are all functioning pretty much as normal. I mean, you go outside your apartment area, and there really isn't any change. However, I do think that if the situation becomes worse in terms of the amount of infection, I think that this sort of soft or phony lockdown may develop into one which is a little bit more rigorous and serious as people begin to feel more of the crisis about if it goes in that direction.
Well, certainly with the rising number of infections being confirmed each day, it seems that at the moment, this kind of reduction of the goal of 70-80% reduction in human contact might not be far enough.
Well,
So
I agree.
that remains to be seen.
Well, I don't think not many people have actually achieved that. At least maybe only a minority have. But let's just presume, take as a philosophical point of departure, that people do end up getting to the point where they're 70 or 80% less human contact, especially for extroverted people or for people who are very social. It may be a tough adjustment to make. So one of the things I want to try to get out there in this session is to see if you have ideas how to not become insane, to actually do things, or at least not insane in a bad way.
Well, I think I'm definitely already insane, but people say I'm fairly harmless. So.
Well, that's right. Good crazy is different from bad crazy.
So I am a very extroverted and sociable person. So whilst I'm smiling now, like, oh yes, I've got used to this is my little corner where I Skype or Zoom people every evening or during the day, separate from my workstation, which is quite nice actually. So perhaps that's a way that's like, without really thinking about it, psychologically, I've created a separate space to be away from my desk. And I think that's probably quite important. But in terms of how to deal with it, I don't want to be one of those people that sit here and give kind of life advice or how to be your best self. I mean, I'm just an average person making my way through this as much as anybody.
I don't know, Phoebe. I think of a lot of ways to describe you, but average very rarely enters the conversation.
Okay, maybe I'm slightly out there, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be relatable for everybody. However, I will talk a little bit about my personal experience and from the people around me and what we're all doing in order to stay the good kind of crazy. So from my personal experience, I think it was around mid to late March when I started to kind of feel the seriousness of the situation. Partially that's because I'm British and my friends and family back in the UK The lockdown came in, I think, around 23rd of March, perhaps. I have to double check that. So they're all experiencing a very profound change of lifestyle and way of living. And of course, I had also been watching events in other countries, Italy, obviously being the prime example. And I think it was very hard to reconcile the kind of difference with Japan, where life was at that point still fairly carrying on as normal. I'd even had visitors mid-March who were still traveling from the UK here, and the big debate was, will they still be able to get a flight back? I have three different friends in different parts of Japan from the UK working out whether they would get back. And still felt like it was it hadn't kind of hit the reality here, but that was a very discordant feeling. So I started obviously reducing going out and changing my behavior, but that adjustment period, it took time, because it was just very discordant from what was going on overseas to how I was living my life, or how I should be living my life. And I was actually asked to write a piece. As I mentioned earlier, I do food tours, and I also write some content, particularly looking at small local businesses or sort of discovering off the beaten track kind of places around Tokyo. Particularly sort of small family-run businesses. And I'm a storyteller by heart, and I love food, so it's wonderful to be able to tell those kind of stories. But the main editor of that site, Culinary Backstreets, she's in Italy, in Milan, and we have tours in different countries around the world, and of course everybody was experiencing very different things. So they asked me to write a diary piece about my past week in Tokyo, and that was when I had a friend visiting. So I was suddenly very confronted with the difference, as it were. And how do I write a piece that said, yeah, I was showing my friend around like a tourist, but at the same time my friends and family and people around the world are suffering? And it was probably one of the most difficult pieces I had to write. So then it came to this point where, okay, they started to ask for jishuku, self-restraint, in Japan, and the event started to move on here. And I think it took about sort of the 2 week period in which I basically wasn't very productive. And I believe that's what a lot of people have been saying elsewhere with this lockdown. Oh, it's great, I have so much time, I'm going to be so productive, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, Z. And there was a piece published fairly shortly afterwards. A few comments went round saying, guys, we're in a international global crisis here. We don't have to be super, super productive. It's okay to kind of relax, just chill out and watch and wait. And so I definitely was in an unproductive watching and waiting kind of mode. But, okay, events in Japan have kind of moved on a bit. Yes, we're not supposed to be going out. It's been a bit more clear direction of, how we should be behaving, like what we should be doing. And if you're looking at the sort of test numbers, which are still relatively low, but the percentage of people being confirmed with coronavirus, going for tests and being confirmed, is much higher than other countries, because they're only testing people that are pretty much confirmed. It's kind of, looking at the signs, you don't want to be going out and about. So, sorry, that was a very long-winded way of saying, how did I get myself to this state here in which I am generally pretty happy in the scale of things? I think partly, and this is what a lot of people are saying, is partly it's actually spending some time away from the computer or away from checking news and things like this, for sure. I'm someone that uses social media a lot. I read all the breaking news notifications, and it's just not good. I'm a very distractible person, so trying to take away, some people are always posting and checking on the numbers every single day, and actually I take at the end of the day or first thing in the morning, I kind of limit the amount of news I consume in terms of the time scale, or I don't always, to just try and keep my head in a space where you can sort of be a little bit, just to get a little bit of space away from it, because otherwise all you'll think about is coronavirus all day, which is not something I want to think about all day every day. We all need a little bit of space to think about something else. And then you're looking skeptical.
No, I'm smiling because it seems that your first piece of advice is to stop reading the news services which we provide.
I didn't say stop reading the news. I said think about the limit the time and when you do it. Otherwise, you could check every single breaking update every hour, and I don't think that's not a way to be productive or healthy in any sense of the words. I don't for me personally. It
Okay,
doesn't
so
mean I don't read the news. That would make me a terrible journalist.
okay, so basically, as I understand it, one piece of advice is don't spend all of your time in the house sitting in front of the computer screen. Uh, do other things. Is what is make sure you have some kind of balance in terms of how you manage your time in the house.
Sure. So there's a difference between not spending time at the screens, but also not um, obsessively reading every single update. I know personally, for me, I got very obsessed with reading everything, and I wasn't doing anything else. So, and I know this from people who also are working as journalists who have family overseas, because you're not just checking Japan news, you're checking internationally, and the time difference. It's about getting a schedule that's healthy and allows you to have periods of concentration where you're not kind of looking at every single update that's coming out. But there's also a difference from time away from the screen. And certainly getting outside the house is super important. Obviously, in other countries, that's kind of restricted. And here in Japan, we are not supposed to be going out a huge amount. But taking a walk, going for a run, the whole kind of exercise is the classic thing to get some exercise. Saying that, for those who are staying inside or don't want to go outside or can't go outside, the amount of different online events, I think, is just a wonderful testimony to human creativity and the adaptability. I don't know how aware you've been of some of the online events, but
Tell us a couple things of interesting points that people might get involved in.
so occasionally, not so much in the past half year, but for the past few years, I've been involved in a community called Sogo, Suns Out, Guns Out. It's an exercise community. I used to go a lot to the boot camp on Sundays, 10 till 12 in Yoyogi Park, and they have various different activities every single day. And now there's a virtual boot camp on Sunday mornings where you can follow. There's morning yoga, which I'm going to be joining. A few friends are joining. You can, log in with Zoom, set your computer up, do yoga to start the day. There's a more kind of vigorous workout called Chamber of Pain, in which you can also participate in. Um,
Sounds vigorous.
yes, it's. I've only been a few times to the actual session, and it is, as it describes, painful in a group suffering, general masochism kind of way. Um, but for me, and I don't know about many people in small apartments in Tokyo, there's also the problem of if you start jumping around very enthusiastically, you're going to disturb your neighbors. And I already got in the first time I've ever got in trouble. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. But I was in a five-way Zoom conversation with Mexico, Florida, Florence, and Taiwan. And so we were all comparing the situation across five time zones. It's quite a lot because at the time it was 8 a.m. in Mexico, 11 p.m. in Tokyo, and all the time zones. And it got very late, and I was with headphones in doing something called Netflix Party, which I recommend if you all want to watch something at the same time. You can put headphones in, you can all watch, and you can talk. If you have Skype running, you can all talk at the same time. There's also a message chat. So it was actually great because it did feel like we were watching it together because I could hear people's reactions and we could all discuss it. But I had no idea how loud I was. So I was laughing my head off at 1:30 and my doorbell rang, which was not my proudest moment. My neighbour could not sleep because I was laughing so much at a TV show. But going off on a tangent there, in terms of exercise, you don't want to jump. There are actually amazing online workouts with no jumping. Just search on YouTube. There's a great kind of workout series called Pop Sugar, which has the most horrendous name. I almost feel bad saying Pop Sugar, but they do really, really good workouts, and you can adapt them. They do different kind of adaptations for different levels. So the different exercises you can do has been pretty interesting. I've invested in weights and a yoga mat, and apparently in the UK, there was a rush on gym equipment, and they all sold out for a while. So those are a few things. God, I could talk forever, Michael. I feel like I'm just talking on and on.
No, but these are all specific things that people could do, which maybe they haven't thought of, and that's the whole point. Uh,
Can I
so
recommend one thing
go
that I
for it.
love? So in the poster for this event, you like Phoebe Amoroso living large, and you borrowed a picture of me with some sake bottles.
Okay.
And
Is
so,
this where we get to the drinking part?
yes, it is a glass of sake that I have prepared earlier. Um,
So you
but
drink
it
sake from a wine glass?
Yes, well, that's how you do it for the tasting. So actually, I was supposed to take some qualifications in sake in March, but due to the situation, my exam got cancelled. But it's about capturing the smell, and I don't want to seem to, um,
Well, why don't you tell us what you have right there?
this one's from Hiroshima, and I actually bought it by mistake, which is a bit embarrassing. But it tastes pretty good. It's a Junmai, polished to 65%, and actually I've only just opened it, so I haven't read the details too much.
Is it
But it's
Karaguchi
got
or
a
Amaguchi?
it would be karakuchi, so it would be on the drier side. They
Mm-hmm.
said +4 on the Nihonshu do, but that doesn't really mean much because it's so variable.
Mm.
But it's it's kind of it's kind of got a nice balance between the sort of more kind of steamed rice notes, but also a slight kind of pear and melon fragrance. It's kind of not quite as polished to make it a ginjo, which would be 60%, but 65 is kind of unusual. So it's kind of sort of in between in that spot, in that place. So I don't know. It's very pleasant, and I think it would pair well with some cheese, which is my latest thing, trying to pair cheese with sake. But the reason why I have this here, not that I'm just getting ready to, well, I am actually getting ready to drink. After I finish talking to you, I'm going to be joining something called Onnomi. And I believe it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I believe it was a group of women in their 40s, either was it Chiba or Kanagawa Prefecture, who coined the term Onnomi. So just for people who might listen to this, who don't speak Japanese, online, and then nomi meaning drinking, so online drinking. So people aren't able to go out, so they drink together, and there are many different kinds just between friends. Organize your own, very easy to do. Just get a couple of friends. You know, you only need one extra person if you want, or there are specific events. So one of my favorite sake bars, they're a really great community, and they've really been trying to. They're quite a young crew with their hometowns are from all over Japan. They often go back to their hometown and bring back regional produce from the area and prepare that as like a small dish or tsumami or kind of small plate, small dishes. And they only operate a few nights a week. They're originally in Shibuya, then they were in Kanda, and they're scheduled to open in Meguro. That's got pushed back a bit given the situation. But they organized their first kind of group on Nomi. I believe we had about 18 people join via Zoom. And they've scheduled it to be every Wednesday at 8 p.m. And so I'm going to join, and you introduce your whatever. It doesn't even have to be sake. You introduce what you're drinking, what your snack is, and it was incredible. They even had someone in France joining, the only person in daylight. So that those are really great ways, and it does actually feel like you're socializing. Another group of friends, I'm in a burger eating group. So I'm just gonna keep talking.
A burger eating group?
I'm in a burger eating group.
Okay, well I've got though we've got to hear about the burger eating group, but there's just
no, it's just I'm a big fan of burgers. Although I get fed up with burgers in Tokyo, I'm very fussy. And a group of friends, about 4 other friends, we basically meet up every few months and go and try a burger. And since we can't do that, we've decided that we will find the best takeout burgers and then all Skype each other tomorrow night. Now, I think I'm gonna try and make it a bit of a competition to see who can get the most delicious looking burger. But interestingly, actually, many restaurants. I think restaurants really saw the signs quite early on. So restaurants offering takeout really increased from 2 weeks ago or more. And we're seeing a lot of creative adaptations. They just have to. Izakayas in Shibuya are offering 500 yen bento boxes at lunch. obviously trying to get business where they can. So places that aren't normally doing things like burgers realize, okay, what do people like, trust something that's easy to eat as a takeout, and are actually starting to offer burgers. So when I actually searched, this kind of nice French bistro is kind of offering that. And one of my favorite hyper ramen creator is his kind of self-described term, has just created three different kinds of ramen burgers where the bun is made out of ramen, and that's going to be going on sale on Uber Eats from Saturday. So there are all kinds of little creative solutions and delicious ways that you can enjoy.
So where are you, if people are interested in trying to hunt down some of these things for themselves, how are you finding this information?
So being a food writer, well, I follow a lot of food related content on Twitter and Instagram. But I think for people who've don't necessarily use so much social media, I think you'll be surprised that Uber Eats, there are a lot of companies that are just jumping on there. I mean, obviously it's a matter of survival, and to not waffle on about how I like drinking and eating burgers, in all seriousness, I'm very, very concerned about the future of the food and drink business, not just in Japan, but worldwide. I'm incredibly concerned, and how the landscape's going to look after this is going to be, yeah, it's going to be a very challenging and probably quite a sad time. But we are seeing people being creative as they can. And yeah, so when I opened my Uber Eats, this local cafe that I normally shuts by 8 p.m. There's not really anyone there. I like to use it as a workplace. It's got big open windows, plug sockets, Wi-Fi, nice coffee. Normally just me and a couple other people in there. They've put their menu on Uber Eats. So the other 2 or 3 weeks ago, I opened Uber Eats. This is before we were all self-isolating, but we were doing a small two or three of us were drinking sake at mine, trying to make some sake related content. And we were going to pair, since we weren't going out, we were going to pair with Uber Eats delivery, and they delivered their home cooked curry and rice. So I think if people just have a look there, there are options. It really depends on where you live, but you can also walk around your neighborhood, places that weren't offering takeout. Any street now has signs saying we've started takeout, we've started. So I don't think it'll be that hard to find something if you don't feel like cooking, which of course is the other big craze. So, suddenly there's shortages of yeast because everyone's a pro baker.
Yeah, I saw an internet meme. It said this lockdown is going to mean half of us will gain a drinking problem, the other half of us will become gourmet cooks.
I don't see this as mutually exclusive.
That's exactly what my response was. I said, why can't I be a gourmet cook with a drinking problem?
Well, I mean, actually being a chef is hard work, right? But in a professional kitchen, a lot of stress. Not that I'm saying alcohol is the answer.
Okay, yes, you're covered. So,
what about you, Michael? Can I throw the question back at you?
well, like I said, my lifestyle has hardly changed. I mean, I've just been continuing to do my daily work in front of the computer, and basically, I was living more or less under lockdown before the lockdown began. So, I mean, even before I go out the front door 2 or 3 times a week, so it's not, it's been really almost no lifestyle change.
Oh, that must be kind of strange to reconcile that with all the news that you're producing about radical changes when your immediate circumstances are not changing.
Well, in a way, but it also means that my infrastructure hasn't been shaken at all. So there's been no gaps. I haven't had to quickly change the workflow or anything. I've just been ready to handle it right from day one.
That's great. Well, there's certainly a lot to handle, and things change by the hour.
Yes, they do. The only thing about me is I need to get my 8 or 9 hours sleep a day. And other than that, I'm good to go.
Oh, that is good. I think that's something that we are all doing, is sleeping a bit more.
And that's not a totally unproductive thing to do.
No, I think someone said something interesting to me actually, in terms of how they were feeling about this situation. It kind of, they said originally, oh, it's permission to kind of relax, it was jokingly, they said goof off for a month Obviously, not entirely, but for those of us, well, many of us who work with food, travel, and kind of content in which literally just cannot do a lot of the work that we would normally be doing. Um, but they said it's kind of a forced reset. And the fact that they weren't sort of going out and about, they said it made them realize how little they needed to exist. And they meant in terms of, expenditure. They weren't spending any money. But I think that's something that we can think about beyond expenditure in terms of what we do need to live a fulfilling life and being happy in ourselves. Just being in your room, four walls by yourself. I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little, not to get a little philosophical, but our sense of selves and identity is always relational and constructed with regard to others. And when things are stopping and your normal life is stopping, you are just with yourself. And for example, I was originally beating myself up for not being productive in the first couple of weeks, but I sat on a bench in a park just in the sun for a couple of hours and I felt happy. And I was like, well, why would I why would I, punish myself for enjoying 2 hours sitting in the sun? That was me as a human being without all these external factors, just being happy in the moment. And I think a lot of people will be reflecting about sort of the things that, their core values and what it takes to live a fulfilling life, if we can take a kind of silver lining approach to this situation.
Yeah, I very much can see that. People reassessing, whatever aspect of life, having time to slow down and to do that. And also, my own hope is that, that people will come to understand that we need to create societies which are more human-centered rather than, competition or profit or growth-centered. That we realize that we need to, that we live in a society and that we need to take more care about, how should we say, the welfare of other people within our society, because their welfare affects our welfare.
Yeah, I think that's something that we've all realized how interconnected we are and how we don't take care of everybody in society. And now, because everyone is so affected, it's the most financially vulnerable that we also need to be supporting. And interesting debates about universal income as well, kind of emerging during this time.
Yeah, I mean, I was already very interested in universal basic income, so for me to see it kind of become mainstream is making me kind of happy to see these debates, which had been sort of left wing fringe sort of stuff, are now being debated by people you wouldn't expect. Well, is there anything else that you would like to kind of bring to our attention before we wrap up the main session here?
Um, I think I've waffled on waffled on quite a lot, but there's certainly a lot of amazing things that you can find and you can do online. I think one thing is that we just see how creative people can be in this kind of situation, and as a result, I have things scheduled most evenings, strangely. So
No,
it's possible. It's great in that sense. Well, not great, but given the circumstances, I think we can all adapt.
so you can keep a busy social life even when you're just in between your four walls, huh?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Catching up with old friends. I think we've all been catching up a lot. And to finish off, certainly reaching out to the people that are valuable in our lives and making sure that we take the time to talk to them. So I think everybody's been doing that across the world, reconnecting.
Okay, very good. So now is the period of time.